we rediscover that the biblical light that existed in the black outer regions of space before it created the 5 billion year old world is talking about 1 John 1:1, 15 billion year old sun throne that created the 5 billion year old world. Now, many astronomers today in high school and colleges around the world is talking about the Earth being in existence as a stone or a huge meteor type rock. Now, if astronomers is teaching this to high school 8th graders and college students, then they are in astronomical error, 100% error, because we now see the creation of mass. Anything that occupies space or has length, width, and height is in the 3rd dimension. So the 4th dimension is light, okay, and light is on a higher frequency. So as the Bible narratives of the European Gentile nation made the same astronomical error in the opening verses of Genesis, it speaks of a 5 billion year old earth or rock floating in the black outer regions of space as the Spirit of God hovered over this rock or earth and separates the waters from the dry land. Then paused and turned around and said, "Let there be light." This is another theological and astronomical error in which Laurel Smith from Chicago, Illinois, nonprofit home video and artworks creation is pointing out in his video that ancient Egypt's solar theology of the black man face upon a lion's body called the Giza Sphinx lion of ancient Judea and Jerusalem. So this is Ezra 1:3, connected to Genesis 49 chapter and 8 verse, where the black man face upon a lion's body called the couching Ethiopian lion sphinx of ancient Judaism. He ruled over the entire book of Genesis 2:7, normal African Adamic race, in which populated South Africa to north. Now, if we draw 12 lines from South Africa and to North Africa, east to west horizontal geographic land surface lines, and then view them with satellite imagery, we will see nothing but African tribes living in each of the 12 horizontal land surface lines. And which brings us into the terminology in which I call the original 12 African continent tribe, in which the Giza Sphinx lion in northeast Africa, in front of the Isaiah 19:19 Giza pyramids, ruled over. But in the 16th century, the 1611 King James of England appointed 72 Greek and Hebrew scholars to fly to the Qumran caves. That's the area between Jerusalem and Judea. So this is in northeast Africa, okay, where you see Judea is in the 11th line. Now remember, we have drawn 12 lines from South to North Africa, east to west geographic land surface line. Now Nigeria will appear in the 9th line, okay, whereas the 11th line would be Ethiopia and Sudan. And in that area, we see area viewed from outer space. We see this is the Giza Sphinx, or black man face upon a lion's body. In other words, that's the Isaiah 19:19 area view with satellite imagery, pyramid era. So the African face upon a lion's body, called the couching Ethiopian lion sphinx of ancient Judaism, he ruled over the entire African continent from south to north. But this was not told to Afro-Americans in the mistranslated King James Bible, in the European Gentile nations' theological-based racism. Now, as we look at this biblical light of the African Sphinx, we are re-examining the solar theology of H.M. Ray, or the 15 billion year old sun throne that existed in the black outer regions of space before it created the 5 billion year old world. Now, when we do this, we will have to go back to the materialization of light into mass. And now, if we look at an old-fashioned electric heater, you plug it into the wall. The iron coils in the heater, when the negative and positive currents move across the molecules or molecular structure or 3D mass structure of the iron, we see a red hot infrared frequency being generated. Now this is very important because the same thing is occurring in the center of the blue basketball shaped Earth. We see a red hot ball of lava, and it's situated between the north and south pole. Now look at the blue basketball shaped Earth. You're going to immediately notice a donut-shaped magnetic field surrounding the blue basketball-shaped Earth. Now this is where we begin to unravel the mystery of our solar system. Now, many astronomers in high school and college textbooks has not touched on this moving quantized black space field equation. This is where the same black space in which we look up at night and see is being moved or manipulated by a moving quantized black space field equation. Okay, now this is the origin of magnetism. Now, when we look at this, we're going to notice that whenever a magnetic field is broken and reconnected, such as in the old-fashioned 1940 bicycle generators, if you take one apart, you see two magnets with copper wire wrapped around each one of them and the axle going through the magnets. As the wheel rotates the magnets around, we see a broken and reconnected magnetic field, and that is generating an electric plasma charge. Now, if we go back to the sun and outer space, we're going to see a magnetic rotating ball of hydrogen-like plasma that created the world, and we're going to see a donut-shaped magnetic field surrounding the sun. In other words, this is where we pick up discovery data concerning the moving quantized black space field equation, because if you have black space being in existence before the Big Bang, okay, that's wrongfully taught in high school and college textbooks to students. Now, if black space always existed, we can look at that as the eternal continuum of our space-time dimensions. Now, if there is to be a Big Bang, then there is no that created the stars and planets and galaxies, then there is no beginning to what we call black space. It's eternal. Make a note of that. Okay. So as we move forward and realize that when black space moves upon itself, as seen with telescopes in outer space by astronomers, they see a rotating form of black space called a black hole. Now, we do the same thing with touching two tornado-shaped black holes tip to tip. Now, as this occurs in the black outer regions of space, we are looking at a moving quantized form of the black space field equation. And so to many of my readers or video viewers, they're going to say, well, what's that, Laurel? Well, that's a new element in which astronomers has not touched on or has not put in their science textbook in high school and grade schools and colleges. So as we look at this new form of black space, where actually to us it's a new form because the human race is just dawned upon getting into the electron microscope image of matter. So as we look at this quantized moving black space field equation, we must involve this geometric image. So now if we look at the 3 image, we're going to say, okay, there's a big white 3, and we see it upon a 6-corner snowflake diagram. Now notice that there's a tetrahedron within the central area of the 6-corner snowflake. And so we're going to see 5 red dots in the center and 3 green dots on the outside. So you say, well, how did you create a tetrahedron in the North Pole area of the blue basketball-shaped Earth? Well, this is what the 5 Martian pyramids or Sidonian pyramids on Mars, all these pyramids is aligned to the stealth pyramid globe Earth Mercator projection of the black African civilizations of Ham. So this is the Genesis 2:7, normally the African Adamic race that the African thinks ruled over. Now remember, in the Bible, in the book of Psalms, the 105th chapter, 23rd verse, the 12 African continent tribes was illegally renamed as theological racism in the 16th century by King James of England, appointed 72 Greek and Hebrew scholars into the 12 sons of Jacob. So the 12 sons of Jacob is wrongfully credited in the mistranslated English King James Bible textbook as starting ancient Judaism.